I'd like to thank that guy on Tinder for today's contingency. Agamemno Contingency. Ambition. In this world, there are people who are fortunate enough to achieve everything they'd ever wanted. Maybe it's to be the top of their field, or to have the love of someone you admire the most. In the end, it'd be hard to imagine wanting more even when you have everything you could have ever wished for. But for Gale, that is exactly what happened, and he would suffer the consequence for it. Gale of Waterdeep, a prodigy wizard who wasn't just the chosen of the goddess of magic, but for a time she was also his lover. Props where they are due, I suppose. Despite everything he had, however, he wanted to go even higher, choosing to go behind his goddess's back and tamper with forbidden magic. Tampering with Netherese magic, however, would have unforeseen consequences. The magic would manifest as an orb deep within his chest, an orb that requires feeding of magic. In a manner of speaking, this turned Gale into a magical vampire, and to further rub salt into his wounds, his goddess would turn him away, leaving Gale to fend for himself until meeting a certain party. Now, when not being hindered by the ravaging hunger for magic, Gale is equipped with various magical spells. Scorching Ray, Shatter, and Magic Missile to name a few. But the list of spells at his disposal are many, and they allowed him a multitude of methods to build his loadout. And given the range on many of these spells, it's unlikely you'll reach him unharmed. That is, if he lets you get that close. That said, there is a limit to the number of spells he can have prepared on any given day, and even then, he can only cast a limited number of leveled spells a day. Now this is usually the part where I explain how I'd counter my target, but there is one thing about Gale I have to address. His story has many endings, with something as simple as one decision having wildly different outcomes, excluding the ones which result in his own demise, something I want to avoid at all costs. There are two versions of Gale that I need to target. The first assumes he remains in his state of needing to feed on magic indefinitely. As stated, he only has a limited number of spells he can use a day, even when at max level. But I'm not willing to test my ability to survive his onslaught until he runs out. One thing about spellcasting is they require a vocal element, meaning should the caster be unable to speak, say, because someone punches them in the throat, they'd be unable to use their magic. Another method, though a bit impractical, is to emit an anti-phase sound wave, canceling out any potential sound he could make, casting the area around him in silence. If both options fail, however, I can also make use of the material known as nth metal. This special alloy has several properties, granting its wielder with a multitude of abilities. But the one that's important to this contingency is its ability to nullify magic completely. Currently, I'm in the process of creating nth metal plating for my suit. If nothing else, it should give me heavy resistance to Gale's attacks. Now, should I be capable of subduing Gale, there is still the factor of how to contain him. Despite his nature, he is a reasonable person, even with his condition. But that condition is what makes him dangerous, even if he himself does not want to be. Providing him with magical items shouldn't be too difficult, as I have my connections. But the orb in his chest will, over time, require more magic, meaning that a time will come where no amount will be able to sustain it. And should it become unstable, the resulting explosion could take out an entire country. My options are limited, as the blast radius is too large to even risk him being on the planet. Gale would likely be the first to suggest sending him off-world, as he has shown a willingness to sacrifice himself before. But to send someone to die alone, he doesn't deserve that. Which leaves the Phantom Zone, a place outside time and space. If Gale is placed here, I believe it will cease the hunger from within him, at the very least for long enough for me to discover a means to rid him of that curse. Now that I've gotten this version of Gale out of the way, I must mention another possible outcome for him. Should Gale make amends with his goddess, he will be allowed to ascend to a higher plane, becoming the god of ambition, resulting in him being far more powerful than he was before. I am unsure of how effective he is in combat, as we only see this form after his story is done. But looking at some of his spells, I've got a good idea just how devastating an opponent he could be. At this point, I'm sure even the Phantom Zone wouldn't be enough, likely being capable of crossing dimensions by his own power. There is a material I've used before known as radion. It has theotoxic properties, which makes it poisonous to gods. I once used this material to craft a bullet to use on Darkseid. That said, I do not wish to kill Gale. as unlike Darkseid, he still retains his morality even after ascending to a god. But I believe that if I can weave it together with nth metal and incorporate it into my Justice Buster, maybe it could give me an edge. I'm also attempting to contact Constantine for any insight he can give. Hopefully he doesn't have a complicated history with this one too. If you also have a character you wish for me to cover, or just want to support this channel, I'll have a link to my Ko-fi page. There will also be a Google Doc with the list of characters who have ever been done or already commissioned by others.